Hello everybody, my name is Frank Summers, and I'm a 2D character animator based out of New York City. In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at a few settings that will aid in traditional paperless animation in Harmony. First, let's go into our settings. We can do that by going to Edit and Preferences. On a Mac, you would go to the Harmony menu and drop down to Preferences. I want to draw your attention to the General tab right here. And here we can turn on autosave to tell Harmony to save our work automatically. We can check off enable to do that right here. You can tell Harmony how many minutes you'd like it to save your scene for you by changing this value right here. By default, it's set to 10. The next setting below is an inactivity period, which will trigger Harmony to save after it has not been used after a certain period of time. So in this case, 1 second. That means if Harmony's getting ready to save my scene and I'm currently drawing, it will patiently wait until I'm finished that drawing for a total of 1 second, and then it will save. The next checkbox down is ask before saving, and that's just Harmony being polite. So I want to draw your attention to the next setting which could help us, which is shortcut zooms on mouse. So before I actually click that, let me hit cancel. I have my keyboard shortcuts set to the default of 1 and 2. If you can see, I'm zooming in and out every time I tap the button. It's just generally kind of centered around the middle of the camera. So we can go back into Edit and Preferences and back to the General tab, and I'm going to click off Shortcut Zooms on Mouse, and I'm going to hit OK. And for the sake of reference, I'm going to make a little red blob. I'm going to put it right down here in the corner, just so we have something to pay attention to. Now that I checked off that box, if I hover my cursor over to my red blob and use my keyboard shortcuts, we kind of start centering in on that area. So it's just a handy way of being able to navigate around in your camera view by hitting that checkbox. Let's go back into Edit and Preferences again, talk about the next one. Head back to the General tab again. So focus on mouse enter right up here. Let's check that off. But before I do, I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to show you what it doesn't do first. So Harmony is very context sensitive. Right now, if I click my camera view, you'll see there's a red box or rectangle that has centered around the camera view. That means this is the active window. If I click my tool properties, now the tool properties is the active window. The same is true for my color or timeline. So since Harmony is very context sensitive, the active window is generally what is going to help us navigate quickly through our UI. And right now I have to manually kind of click each of these windows, which can be a little cumbersome. So if we go back into Edit and go to Preferences again, and I'm going to the General tab, I'm going to check off Focus on Mouse Enter and hit Enter or hit OK. And now I'm just simply hovering my stylus or your mouse, your cursor, hovering over each of these windows, and that is updating and changing the active window as I hover. I know it sounds like a small thing, but it does certainly help speed up your workflow once you get used to it. So let's talk about our next one. So we already drew our little red blob here. I'm going to draw your attention to our timeline down here on the bottom. I'm going to move forward in time and go to this empty cell at frame 10. And I'm going to just draw a little square right here. Okay, there's our square. And if I step back in time, you'll see that there's a big empty space here that has not been filled in. My exposure for my circle, a little red circle over here, let's make it a little bigger so you can see it. My exposure for my circle hasn't been filled in. So one thing we can do to fix this is tell Harmony to automatically fill in the exposures as we create new drawings. We can go back into Edit, we can go to Preferences, we can go to Exposure Sheet, and I'm going to check off two things while I'm in here to save a little bit of time. We can go to Drawing Creation and we can check off Extend Exposure of the previous drawing and Use Current Frame as Drawing Name. I'm going to check both of them off while I'm in here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to around frame 20, pay attention down here to our timeline. I'm going to draw a little, what should I draw? Triangle? Sure. And when I let go of my triangle, you'll see it will automatically fill in the exposure for us. So that's a handy and quick way of just quickly filling out your exposures in your timeline as you work. The other one I checked off, using the frame as the drawing name, will really help us organize in our library as we traditionally animate. So as we move forward, and if I start doing a bunch of in-betweens in between here, for example, Harmony will automatically label all of our drawings, whatever that drawing name will happen to be. So if I go to frame 15, and if I hit Create New Drawing, pay attention to the drawing name up here, it's going to change it to 15 for us. Ta-da! The new drawing, it made it drawing 15 already for us. So that just really helps organize our library and our drawing numbers. So let's head back into our preferences one more time. Edit, Preferences. Let's see, where are we going today? Let's go to the Advanced tab, Advanced. And so there's two things in here, but let's just talk about one first. Support for overlay and underlay art. So mine is already checked off, but by default, I believe it is not. So we can check that off and hit OK, and then we'll come back to the second one. So the overlay and underlay arts. So I have mine docked over here because that's where I personally like to put my overlay and underlay arts, but you can dock it anywhere you want, and if it's not showing, you can just right-click and you can turn on and off the art layer. I'll turn it back on again. There it is. By default, you'll only see the L, which stands for line art, and the C, which stands for color art. And you select them simply by clicking them. And so we added the O for overlay and the U for underlay. So each of our layers in Harmony have these 4 sub-art layers that's sort of replicating a cell from traditional animation. If you know anything about the history of traditional animation with cells, generally speaking, the line art was applied to one side of the cell, and then when the paint was applied, you would flip the cell over on the back of it and apply your color. So that's kind of replicating that idea. But it also comes in handy for lots and lots of other design things. So we can use our O or our overlay layer to apply any kind of brush, like an airbrush effect using any of our texture brushes. The overlay layer can also be used for direction notes from your director. They can scribble things down there. And our underlay is really handy for rough animation. I use it a lot for rough animation, particularly in puppet animation. But yes, lots of rough animation or corrections for yourself can be stashed down here on the underlay art layer. So very handy. I definitely recommend turning that preference on. Let's talk about the last one. Let's go to Edit. Let's go to Preferences, our last one. Back to our Advanced tab. And right now, Element Node, Animate using the animation tools, is not turned on. It is not turned on. I typically have it turned on, but for traditional animation for a paperless production, it might be best to have this turned off. So let's uncheck that, and I'm going to hit OK. And I'm not sure if this layer has it or not. Yes, it looks like this layer does. So what that means is any new layers that we create by default, hello, add and close, we won't be able to use, as you can see, I just made a new layer called hello. What a great name, huh? Using my transform tool or any of the advanced animation tools, I can't move the position, scale, or rotation of that layer. We can only do that with pegs. It just helps keep a little bit of separation between drawings and keyframes. And maybe in a paperless production, maybe that's what you're looking for. So that's about it for now. I hope you enjoyed these tips, and I really urge you to please experiment to see what works best for you and for your production. I will see you in the next video.